Hi, and welcome to the Magic Pages podcast, a new podcast where we sit down with the people building, hosting, and publishing on Ghost. My name is Jannis. I am the founder of Magic Pages, and I am here today with, our very first customer that goes all the way back to 2023 with Christine. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on as the first guest that is not part of the Magic Pages team.
Wow, I'm honored.
Well, you're also the very first customer, so it only makes sense that you're the first external guest on our podcast.
Yay!
Christine, can you tell people a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a freelancer who also works for a agency that helps with email deliverability, and I basically help a wide variety of companies from creators to e-commerce with making sure that their emails are out of spam and making sure that we provide good practices so that subscribers feel safe and we ensure that they're not scammy.
I mean, that in today's world, something that the world can definitely need. I want to take the listeners and the two of us a little bit back, actually further back than before Magic Pages existed, to the year of 2022.
Wow.
When we met. Can you tell your side of the story? Do you remember how we met or how that happened?
Yeah, so back in 2022, we had both taken a course, and in that course, we all had different projects, and we both focused on projects providing value on Twitter. Like some colleagues would focus on, I need to sell products, but both of our projects were free and we just wanted to provide value, which I think really helped us bond. And you introduced me to your wife, Maria, and then when we jumped on a call, I laughed so much that I thought I needed to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I remember that. And in the beginning, we didn't know whether you were serious or not. It's the best way to get to know each other. But yeah, so we met on Twitter. Twitter doesn't exist anymore. It's now called X. We're both not on Twitter/X anymore. Yet that was the place where Magic Pages was essentially born. It wasn't as part of the course you mentioned. I've done a couple of other projects from there. Specifically, I've designed templates for a service called Card. And then at some point, I started talking about this new thing, which didn't really have a name back then, but it turned out to be Magic Pages. I started talking about the fact that it will be based on Ghost, that it will evolve around Ghost. And you immediately showed interest because you've already worked with Ghost before. What made you say, yes, I want to try this? What did you think about the project back then?
There were a couple of reasons why I was interested. One being I purchased one of your card templates and I was thinking, wow, like there was just so much quality in those templates. I remember your templates were definitely different and they were more aligned with what I was doing, which was being a service provider and trying to get people to book a call or email me. So I remember just being amazed, and anytime I needed any tweaks, you were so willing to help me. And so I remember us chatting, and when you were building this platform, a lot of things actually stood out for that. Like my previous experience with other platforms was if you're a small creator, you don't have that many subscribers, you're kind of limited because sometimes that plan doesn't give you the option to add a custom theme. And that was something that I wanted to include, and then if I wanted to, I would have to pay more. And then I tried many different Ghost providers, and not being very technical back then, it became a bit of a challenge because some people were telling me, oh, you need to learn how to code and all these different things. And I remember when you had helped me previously with projects like on Card or Ghost, you were able to do it without making me feel like a tech dino. You actually guided me and were just so willing. So when you were telling me that you were creating it, I already knew that it was going to stand out. One being because the quality of your work is very thorough and you always make sure that there are no errors, and also that people can come to you, like I could come to you for any support. So those were some of the things that stood out.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, can you quickly walk us through what other platforms you have used before? Was it WordPress? Was it something else that you've tried before for your website?
Before getting into marketing, I was also a fitness coach who was also a creator, and I tried many different platforms like WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, and the very first site I created back in 2018 was just very complicated for someone who started out with like $0. It was like, oh, you need an SSL, you need a domain, oh, actually you need another inbox, and by the time like I finally had my website published, it took 6 months and $1,000 on all these different things that I learned you don't actually need. So if I had learned about Ghost back then with Magic Pages, it would have been so much better.
Specifically about Ghost itself, it's been quite some time, but do you remember how you learned about Ghost and what made you want to try that even before Magic Pages? Do you remember how that happened, how you found out about Ghost?
Yeah, so it was from a friend. He already had his Ghost site running and he had sent emails, and I just remember, wow, it's so clean and polished. And he like said that he didn't need to like do all these crazy setups like WordPress. It was already nicely set up. And I remember him telling me the design part, you didn't have to do things like other platforms where you have to adjust every single block for every single color design and all that. It was very simple. And so when he told me, I was like, oh wow. And then I tried a plan on Ghost and I was like, wow, I really like this. It's very simple. You can get it up and running and it looks very clean and easy to read.
I also remember a very distinct moment, which was the weeks leading up to me actually, let's say, pre-launching Magic Pages, about telling the world what it is and giving people a way to sign up. And I remember that every couple of days you would text me and you would say, please take my money. Where can I put my credit card? Can I pay already? And honestly, for me back then, that was the nicest thing somebody could have ever done. Not because of the actual money that you paid then, but it showed to me an incredible support that somebody believed in the thing that I did back when I think I didn't even believe in it myself. So for me, that was extremely helpful. But the question that always stood out to me was essentially, why did you trust somebody so blindly? You bought the very first lifetime plan Magic Pages ever sold. There was no product, there was nothing that you could actually look at, and you were willing to put $249 down back then. Why was that?
One being like we definitely built a really strong friendship at that point, and I knew that I could trust you. If something were to happen to the site, I knew that the value was there. And I think even if we weren't friends, or like if I was to be really objective here, I think that was like a couple years membership at another Ghost platform. I was like, oh, if I even have this website running for a couple years, it's already worth it. And I already knew that the support would definitely be pretty high quality. And like when you started it, I was like, okay, well, I know Jannis and I know he's going to do good work. I've had other friends that said they were going to do it, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep bugging him until he actually ships it, because this could be something. And it's a crazy full circle moment to see where it is now.
Yeah, I will be forever grateful for pushing me like that, for pushing the development further as well, because you were also one of the first that actually then set up the Ghost website. Because I'm not sure if you remember, but there was like a gap of, I think, 3 months or so between when I opened the pre-sale and people actually being able to use their first Magic Pages site. And you were also one of the first people that then tried that and set up their site and told me, like, there's a bug here, I cannot press on this button, and this doesn't work, and this doesn't work.
And then I deleted my site.
I don't think you ever deleted your site, but there were definitely challenges to getting that set up. And that constant feedback, even now, like whenever you use your current Ghost site, you actually reach out and you give feedback, and that has been incredibly helpful. A couple of months after that first site launch, you actually came back and you asked if you could buy another lifetime plan for a second project of yours. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So the second blog that I created on Magic Pages. It's called Your Kines Mentor. And something that I value a lot in my life, in my career, is having mentors and people that are a couple steps ahead of you. So I was very grateful. I actually have a master's in kinesiology, and when I did my master's, I had so many people that were so willing to help me, a lot of alumni, people older than me. They were very generous. They never asked for anything in return. And I remember asking one of them, like, how can I repay you? And he was like, you don't repay me, you help the next generation. And at that time, I had already left the kinesiology field to go into email marketing. And so I was like, okay, what can I do that can be timeless, that can provide value, even not just in Canada, but maybe internationally? And I remember talking to my colleagues who were in my master's program, and a few of them agreed to join forces and to share a wide spectrum of their knowledge, their connections in this blog. We thought that a blog post would be great because it's a place where people likely will Google, be able to read it. And we tailored the blogs to make it seem like a letter to our younger self. I remember doing my master's, some of my colleagues didn't have mentors and they wish they had a mentor. So the goal of the blog was basically to write it as if it's a letter to a mentee, so the mentee reads it and feels like, oh, I have a mentor. We don't ask for any money. You can jump on a call with us. You can email us. Some people still reach out to this day. We haven't really created any new post for the past couple years, but sometimes people will still reach out to us. So it's pretty rewarding. Originally, we had it on Wix, which was an interesting process where like it was just, it was only one color. And when you set up a website on Wix, each box is auto defaulted to purple, and I remember spending so many hours switching the default color purple to our brand color, which took forever. I reached out to Jannis if we could do another plan, and within less than 30 minutes I was able to migrate all the previous blogs and the design and everything into Magic Pages, like super easy.
To be fair, that is Ghost's job, yeah, and they're doing a really great job at making the start as easy as possible, I think. The one thing I remember from that is that Wix doesn't have any proper export functionality, which was one of the big disadvantages from migrating from Wix to any Ghost site. Because, for example, from WordPress, you have automated migration tools where you just point Ghost to your WordPress site, and then in the background, your Ghost site will essentially pull in all the content from the WordPress site. For Wix, that doesn't exist, unfortunately. So I remember that we had long evenings where you copied everything over and you asked, oh, is that correct? In the end, I think the site looks a lot better now, just because it's a lot more structured.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm glad we ended up where we are now, and we can laugh about it. Can you also tell us a little bit about your personal blog? Because that has changed over the years. I remember in the beginning, you've used it kind of also a similar way that you've used Cart, where you told people about email marketing and the services you can provide. Then you've actually hid it for, I think, years by now, behind like a private flag. And now you are starting to use it again. What's the thinking behind that?
When I started the website, it was tied to when we were building personal brands on Twitter X. And during that time, I was heavily focused on talking about email marketing, but my newsletter was almost like a personal journal entry, just talking about career, growing up, being in my 20s, living in Canada. And it was great, but I think social media has pros and cons, and kind of near the end, maybe similar maybe to you, it just wasn't the same place anymore. Everyone was trying to sell you something. I didn't really sell on my newsletter. I shared the silliest things, and sometimes a potential client would reach out because of a silly email about my dog and world domination or something. And I kind of wanted to just end that chapter because it didn't feel the same anymore. The people that were joining also did a reverse thing, that they were like, hey, let's jump on a call, and then they tried to sell me something.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't really like that anymore, so I kind of took a step back. I felt mentally I wasn't in the right spot, so I kind of just did a weird thing and just decided to become a ghost. I deleted my Twitter account and I just hid myself because some people were kind of using my credibility too. And so I didn't really want people to associate my credibility with them winning. And so for me, I just took a break. And then recently, it's kind of a funny full circle moment because back in 2023, we joked about maybe we could meet one day. And you guys had moved to Austria, and I was like, oh, I have family in Austria. And we kept talking, and then I decided, okay, I want to go visit Europe, and you guys showed me around Europe last year. I was like, wow, I really love Europe. And then in September, I visited you again. Then I was like, wow, I think I could really live here.
Well, just to interject there, you did not just visit us. You visited people you've met on the internet, flew all across the Atlantic to meet us, and then have a 6,500 kilometer road trip through Europe with us. That is generally something I would not advise, but I'm glad it turned out the way it did. And yeah, then you came back in September for a second time, which again started as a joke because we said, oh, Christine, come on. We're busy in October, but you could still come over in September. And then in September you were here. And I remember you saying, yeah, I could live here.
Yeah, it was... for also context, I never really left North America a couple years ago, never really traveled or made any big plans. And so... yeah, moving here to Austria was definitely a big leap as I'm like turning 30 this year. I wanted to make sure that I promised my younger self I would do something adventurous. And thinking about, my younger self and writing to my younger self, I was like, I definitely should be documenting this. So how I'm able to actually live in Austria is because in Canada we have a working holiday visa that allows people under 30 roughly to be able to travel and live in countries for a year to basically promote traveling. And so when I started sharing about that online with friends and colleagues, they were like, oh, I never even knew about that. I wish I knew about that.
Yeah.
And so it's made me realize that I should probably document that. But there was an obstacle for me to use my ghost site because of DNS record issues. I was on a provider that was hosting my domain.
Domain registrar, yes.
Yes, register.
Do you mind if we spill the beans who it was?
I'm okay with it if you're okay.
So in the end, it turned out to be Squarespace, but I think you actually registered your domain with Google Domains in the very beginning, right?
Yeah,
and then Google Domains or Google didn't want to host domains anymore for whatever reason, and they sold it to Squarespace, who wasn't a domain registrar at all. They were a content management system, and all of a sudden they inherited a ton of domains from Google Domains.
Yeah, so even having that news, like Squarespace randomly reaching out to me so many years, I was confused because it was like, why is Squarespace emailing me? And then Google updating, we've basically given your domain or transferred it to Squarespace. There were some DNS record issues in terms of if I wanted to change it, it would forward to an inbox that I no longer had.
An email inbox.
Yeah, right? From my domain. And so, which was, doesn't seem like too much of an issue, but when you're trying to change a DNS record in Squarespace, it will ask for an authentication code that they sent to that email inbox. And so no matter where I changed, and when I talked to customer support, I talked to them multiple times, like across a week, no one was really giving me an answer. They're like, oh, we're sorry, you need to talk to my manager. And then manager would be like, oh, please fill out this ticket. And then the next manager was like, please fill out this ticket. And then it became like a hamster wheel of tickets that went nowhere. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to Jannis. And Louis went across the apartment and was like, I need your help.
Yes, because you now are a neighbor.
Yeah.
So that works as well. You live here for a year now, so we can have some live support sessions. Basically, what we did was hack the system a little bit. Not literally, but they wanted you to have an email inbox where they had the DNS record set, but you couldn't change that. I think it was pointing to Gmail still, but you didn't have that Gmail account anymore. So you also couldn't sign up for Gmail another time because you wouldn't receive the confirmation code that they wanted, and you couldn't change it on Squarespace because Squarespace sends a confirmation code to the actual email that we wanted to change, where we wanted to change the MX records. So in short, what we did was basically add a second two-factor. After nearly an hour of trying to figure it out, we figured, we can just add a second factor basically, which was just an authenticator app, which then let us change the DNS records, and we then moved your domain to Cloudflare with lots of other hoops that we had to jump through. But finally, you were able to connect to the things again, and then also log into your Ghost site, because Ghost now also sends a second factor to the email that you've registered with. So long story short, we have rescued you from hell. You can now use Ghost again. And all of that because of a change or a transfer where Google said we don't want to host domains anymore. But now you have your Ghost site back. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah, so now I need to, right now it's just kind of a funny post, but now it's going to be more documenting the year, share more of I have had friends be like, what are the difference between living in Canada, Austria?
What is the biggest difference? I remember the first time we went to a grocery store and you were very surprised about one particular thing.
Yeah, so in Canada, or maybe I'm unaware, most toilet paper you buy is single ply, double ply, or I usually buy double ply, and triple ply is premium stuff. And then I learned here that triple ply is not enough. It's 3 times 4 to 5 ply is the good stuff. And I was this triple ply recycled one, that seems decent. And then I learned it's actually for if
I think I said this is the kind of toilet paper that your employer buys when they don't like you.
Yeah, so that was very fascinating. It's amazing how different things are, and also because of my fitness background, I'm just very intrigued with ingredients and how the ingredients and EU is very strict with your guys' ingredients, and there's less processed or random things like color being an ingredient here.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, you have lots of what we call E-numbers.
Yeah.
Which then the color red as an ingredient turns into an E-number. But yeah, I also remember us cooking one day and you looking at the pasta and being very confused how the only 2 ingredients are water and flour. You also said in the beginning you are in email marketing. I think at some point you used the term email deliverability manager. Is that still correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you basically make sure that people or that businesses end up in the actual inbox, right? What does that usually look like? What's the most common thing that you see that people mess up?
So I think there's 2 routes to this. There's certain things that I can help with, and then there's certain things like the platform, for example, Magic Pages, that I would communicate with my client, with the platform. And there's kind of 2 streams when I think of it. If you're a solopreneur, creator, you don't need to go far out and do things compared to these 8-figure businesses that I'm working with. But it's interesting that both parties, there are things to take into account with getting out of spam, making sure that the inbox is right. So we could kind of maybe focus more on the creator side with Magic Pages.
Yeah, that would be helpful. What is the most common issue that you see smaller senders basically do? Let's say they set up a new email sending domain. What is the most common issue that you see with that?
Actually, I think this reminds me of when I had to put in my new DNS records into Magic Pages, is making sure that the right DNS records are properly authenticated. So I know we're kind of getting technical here, but there's these things that you need to put in to make sure that your emails are properly sending, or else service providers like Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, they will automatically put your emails in spam, or it won't even send because your records aren't put in.
I think we can actually be technical because most people are running their websites, and worst case, I will also link one of our blog posts in the show notes. That's still a sentence I need to get used to. The links are in the show notes where we explain it a little bit more. But essentially, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but we have three kind of technical areas that we can look at. The first one is SPF, which basically says these are the sources that are allowed to send for me. Then we have DKIM, which is more like a signing algorithm that just says, yes, this email actually comes from the right source. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then we have DMARC, which is basically saying, if something is fishy about this, then deal with it in this certain way. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think that's way better than what I would say. Yeah, those are the three things that we definitely look for. And the common error that happens is that people will have multiple SPF records, especially if they're adding in a new platform. Like maybe they were sending from one platform and now they're sending from Magic Pages, and there's multiple SPF records for their domain. So for example, my domain's like christinetrack.net. I'm only allowed one SPF record, so it should only be one row. But oftentimes when people are sending from a new platform, the new platform will be like, oh, add an SPF record, and you add another one, and then all of a sudden, potentially all of your emails are going to spam, and that's when clients come to me. What I like about Magic Pages is that when I was setting up my DNS records, it actually alerts you as to where your DNS records are, like GoDaddy, Squarespace, all that. And it also tells you if you need to update your current SPF record or if you need to add a new one, which saves a lot of time when like clients come and they're like, everything's failing, I don't know where to start. That is like the number one error. And I've even worked with 8-figure businesses that was the reason why they were having spam problems.
Interesting. So maybe background of why I've built it this way. As I said before, DNS records are literally the number one reason of support requests that we've had. And there are two sides of that. Two sides where at Magic Pages you can or you will have to deal with DNS records. That is your custom domain itself, so that your blog is essentially reachable at, in your case, christinetrack.net. And then you have the second part, which is the sending part, where you send email newsletters. And technically, you can send it through our sending domain, which is mymagic.page. It will work. It is monitored. We are sending a couple of 100,000 emails through that domain every single month. But it does have the disadvantage that your emails will be branded with that sending domain. And some people don't want that. This is where they then set up the custom sending domain. And this is the second part where you have to deal with the DNS records, because you need to add what we said before, SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and then some other stuff that we show you. And I realized that there is a lot of support requests that came in specifically for the DNS setup. And it was always the same. And I couldn't blame people, because honestly, for me and for you probably, we touch DNS records all the time. We know what they do. We know how they work. We know what an MX record is. We know what a CNAME record does, all of those things. But for most people that just want to have their own personal corner on the internet, they might touch DNS records once. Maybe they touch it like once every 2 to 3 years when they move platforms. But for them, DNS records is this really black hole where you tell them, well, go to your domain register. That's already the first term that they've never heard about. Set your DNS records, the second one, to a CNAME, the third one, with the host of this and the value of this. So from a service provider's perspective, that's completely right to do it this way. But from a customer's perspective, they will just tell you, what the hell? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And then earlier this year, we basically built a widget of sorts that will essentially look up what domain register the domain is on. That can be Squarespace, that can be, in your case now, Cloudflare, it can be GoDaddy, Namecheap, whatever it is. We have, I think, 60 to 70 different domain registers put in there, where we just looked at the data, like what are people actually using on Magic Pages. And then we created step-by-step guides for those domain registers specifically. Because honestly, we didn't know most of them. 60 to 70 domain registers, that's just so many that you don't know all of them. I can tell you how to set DNS records on Cloudflare. I can tell you how to do that on GoDaddy, Namecheap, maybe Squarespace, now that I looked at it with you. But I have no idea how to do that on a small niche provider like NameSilo, for example. Never heard of that before I looked into it. But there are people that host a domain on it. So what we did was essentially point an LLM at this list and say, LLM, please look at the documentation, what those domain providers have out there, and figure out what the steps are. We still manually went through it and double checked what was there. Also signed up for accounts with some of them to double check whether that's actually correct, and then put that in. Now we have a widget that is basically a little bit of magic, I think. You say, I want to connect this domain or this custom sending domain. It automatically knows from our configuration what DNS records we need. It then looks up which domain register you're on. And then it tells you not just the list of records that you need to put in, but it tells you the exact terms of what the columns are that you need to put what part in and how you get to those columns, for example. And then all you need to do is click one button and wait that it verifies. And all of that basically came out of the need that it is one of the biggest support requests that we had. And I wanted to, on the one hand, take some of that support burden off us. So that's also the honest answer to that from our side. It was a lot of support requests and we cut them down by a lot. Just to give perspective, in December, before I hired Svatoslav, who's now doing support, I think we got 20 to 30 support requests per day. I was doing all of those alone. Then Svatoslav started in February, and mid-February we added that widget. And now we have days where we don't get a single request, which is scary. It is so scary that at some point I sent test requests to our email and to our chatbot to see whether it actually works. But that was the impact of making DNS records and also sending domains at that point understandable for people.
That is honestly a game changer. I wish more softwares did that more.
Yeah. I think one of the next steps that I want to do is to actually open source that solution. Because there is a very gated solution that can do that for you that costs $250 starting price per month. But the entire technology is openly available. Anybody with a little bit of programming knowledge can look up where a domain is hosted. So we've now tested it for, I think, 4 months. And I think one of the next things during the summer is to just open source that solution and to also give it to other software companies out there, other software as a service providers, because it's saved us personally as Magic Pages a lot of time answering messages. But on the flip side, what I rather look at is also that our customers were just enabled to do that themselves. And I think that having spoken to some of them, that is a very empowering feeling if you don't know how to do that. Yeah. But we came from a completely different angle. I just stole your show in that.
No, that was great. I think that's very insightful. I think that's, like I remember doing it for the first time and being very proud. I was like, wow. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about those updates.
Yeah, I think you did that yourself one evening, and then the next day you came over to our apartment because, we just have drinks, tea or whatever together. Yeah. And then you just proudly said, oh, Jannis, I just connected my custom sending domain. And that was the moment where I also felt like, yeah, I'm like honestly glad that this worked so smoothly. Christine said before, you should only have one SPF record. And then she plugged our tool, and our tool does exactly that because it also knows those rules. It knows you should only have one SPF record, and it basically checks specifically whether you already have an SPF record. And if you already have it, it shows you the adapted version of it, because you can add multiple sources to one SPF record, but you cannot have multiple SPF records. And that is the entire magic. Apart from having only a single SPF record, is there anything else that you would want? A newsletter provider that is sending maybe a couple hundred emails per month, maybe a couple of thousand to their subscribers. Is there anything else that they should keep in mind? Anything where you say that is maybe overrated advice in the email deliverability space? Maybe that is underrated and you wish that more people knew about that?
I really like that question because back then when I was on Twitter, I remember sending all these tips, but I think that it may have done more harm than good because people got overwhelmed to the point where they couldn't really be creative because they're like, oh, I'm worried I'm going to have too many links or too many images. But at the end of the day, what's even worse is if you don't send that email. If you don't do anything and you only send one email every like 6 years or something, it's going to be hard to really improve your deliverability long term. You'll probably see online that people will be like, oh, limit your links and images. For creators specifically, I would say be more consistent. If you notice your open rates do drop below 20%, especially like Magic Page users, is to reach out to Jannis and see like, okay, what is happening? Could it be a Microsoft issue, a Yahoo issue? What I like about Magic Pages is that you guys have dedicated IP addresses.
Yes, we use a pool of IPs that we basically expand when we see the need for it. And we also balance bigger customers with smaller customers so that basically the IPs themselves are basically balanced with what they send. That some of the people on that IP might send tens of thousands of emails every month and others might just send a couple of dozens. And then what I've seen is that this balances pretty well in the end of the month if you look at the deliverability rate.
Okay, yeah, that is perfect because I remember Ghost only could show at one point opens and clicks and things like bounce rates. I don't think you can see on Ghost yet.
You cannot, but if anybody ever wants to know their bounce rates, I can get that out of Mailgun. Mailgun is the email backend that Ghost uses basically, which is completely managed for you. So you don't need to know about it. But if you want to know what your bounce rate is, what the reasons are for bounces, then just reach out and I'll be happy to share that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really good. So I would say, yeah, the biggest thing would be as long as your open rates are consistent and you don't see a huge drop, then there's no huge issues. But usually a huge drop can indicate a delivery error or possibly emails going to spam. And that's when I would say to talk to Magic Pages or whoever your provider is for them to look in further. But for most creators starting out, as long as you have the DNS records in place, my biggest feedback is don't let these tactics of, use these certain words to get out a promo tab and stuff be your main issue. It really isn't going to be a huge thing unless it's a big company that really heavily relies on it. But for creators, if people are a fan of you, they will look for your emails. They'll go looking for them in the inbox and they'll reply to them. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too many on the nitty-gritties.
Okay, I actually really love that. To just have consistency and to just regularly send emails rather than focusing on how many links, how many images. And also just from a creator's perspective, I think it also matters because you take away one of the barriers where you think, okay, how can I further optimize that rather than just sending what you want to send or basically taking that step and just share your thoughts, share your thinking rather than getting stuck in all the technical details because over time, I think that they will iron themselves out. Yeah, love that. Thank you, Christine. Last question. Is there anything that I did not ask you that I should have asked?
Okay. I think we covered everything in terms of how we met, seeing Magic Pages get to where it is now. And I just want to share more about my experience with Magic Pages. I've used all the different providers with Ghost, different platforms, and what I can say is that especially I have some insider insights, but I like how Magic Pages is becoming more of a community and you don't feel like it's like another software that you're talking to a developer or IT person in support where they make you feel, they kind of belittle you because you don't know how to do DNS records. It's really important to have someone that be able to assist you without feeling very like you don't know anything, like you're back in school scared to ask questions because you have a teacher that won't let you ask questions type of thing. But I'm really glad to be on the sidelines and seeing where Magic Pages is growing. And I think the reason why I usually recommend people, especially to Magic Pages and Ghost, is like a lot of my friends and colleagues, especially in fitness, they ask me like, where should I build a website? And they're like, oh, don't I need to send emails too? And that's usually the two common things that coaches and creators need is they need to have their own website because people ask, oh, well, couldn't I use like Substack or something else? And I would say, yeah, but they could kick you out for any reason and you don't own your something could happen to it. And then progressing to more technical, it was nice to be able to recommend Magic Pages because it takes 5 minutes to set up. You don't need all these like SSL certificates and all that stuff. You have a website and the ability to send emails to subscribers all in one, and you can protect your data and privacy, and you know that it's not going to be sold somewhere. Well, that's my assumption.
Mine as well.
Like especially with Magic Pages. And I think that's really important as time goes on with like technology and all that. I think it's really important to find a platform that you can trust in like long term. I've had to move my site so many times, and I don't think I'll be moving away from Magic Pages, hopefully. But yeah, the other thing is being able to message Jannis if I needed something tweaked or something. It's just so easy to do. So I think that is the one thing I wanted to highlight for especially like coaches and creators to use Magic Pages.
Well, thank you very much. Honestly, I don't know what to say. Thank you for also trusting us with your website. Also for always having our backs, for sharing about Magic Pages, talking about Magic Pages to people. So thank you for coming over from your apartment to our home office / podcast studio, for taking the time.
A long commute.
It definitely was, yes. For being the first external guest, for being the first in-person guest, because even last week with Svelteslav not being in Austria, we had to do a remote recording. Yes. So this is the first in-person recording, which is also new. We'll see how it's going to sound. So thank you for taking the time. If people want to find you online, where is the best place to look?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super honored. And yeah, I would say check out christinetrack.net.
Perfect. Last time in episode 1, I have learned that you end the podcast episode by saying thank you. So thank you to you, Christine. Thank you to everybody listening, and have a lovely rest of your day, and goodbye.